السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وبعد. وعن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم لا يزال يستجاب للعبد ما لم يدعو بإثم. The Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, he said that the servant will be responded to. Servant, whenever it says servant, it means servant of Allah. We're all servants of Allah. So the servant will be responded to as long as he or she does not make a dua for some sin. أو قطيعة رحم, or breaking some family relationship. ما لم يستعجل, and basically as long as he's not becoming hasty. قيل يا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ما الاستعجال. So the Messenger of Allah, somebody asked the Messenger of Allah, what do you mean by the third one? So far he said two things. He said that the dua of any servant of Allah is going to be answered as long as they don't make dua for something that is sinful, something that is haram. So if you say, for example, oh Allah, I'm buying a lottery ticket, please help me win this lottery. Don't assume your dua is going to get answered. You're not supposed to be doing that. And the second one is asking to cut off family ties. So if you say, you know what, Allah, I hate my uncle. I hope I never see him again. You should not be doing something like that. This is not a correct dua to make. And then he says, as long as you don't get hasty. So the third one, some of the Sahaba, they said, Messenger of Allah, what do you mean hasty? What do you mean by that in terms of the dua will be answered unless you become hasty? قال يقول, he said that if somebody says قد دعوت وقد دعوت فلم يستجيب لي, says I made dua, no one answered. It was not answered for me. فيستحسر عند ذلك ويدع الدعاء. So the person starts to become frustrated with that, and they stop making dua because basically they think that the dua is not going to be accepted. Rawah Muslim. This is a hadith in Sahih Muslim. So we learned that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was teaching that when somebody makes dua, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to answer that dua. And of course, the answer to the dua comes in two main ways, or three main ways. Two main ways and then one supplementary way. One of them is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives you what you're asking for, but you don't know when you're going to have that dua answered. He gives it to you in the right time and in the right way. The second is that if you make a dua, instead of giving you that specific thing, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala averts and prevents some calamity that was going to happen to you. And you say, but I wanted that thing. Say, Allah did something actually better for you. Because sometimes we want something and we don't realize what's good for us. So even if you go to some people and say, you know what, I would like this, I would like that. You go to a store, let's say a small mom and pop store, and you say, I want to buy this specific product. And they say, you know what, this is not actually what you need. What are you looking for? You say, this is what you want to do. You want to remodel something in your home. What you actually need is this other thing. So they redirect you to something that's better for you. Maybe sometimes you understand it, sometimes you don't. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala answers dua in that way sometimes. And sometimes, if He doesn't answer or if He doesn't redirect it in something else, every single dua that you've made, you're going to get the reward for that on the Day of Judgment. So much so that people on the Day of Judgment will hope that their duas for this dunya were not answered, and they wish that they could have had that credit on the Day of Judgment. So this is exactly what is being said, that Allah will respond to your dua in one of these with three ways, unless you do one of three things. Unless you ask for something haram, you don't ask for something haram. Unless you are trying to cut off some family relations, you should not do that because that's haram. Same category. And number three, unless you get hasty and you get frustrated and you say, this dua is not working, and you know what, forget, I don't think it's ever going to be answered. What's the point of doing this dua? And then you stop making dua. And it's very important because it says, وَيَدَعُ الدُّعَاء. The person stops making dua. What does Allah want you to do? He wants you to keep making dua because the Messenger of Allah he said, dua huwa al-ibadah. That making dua is the act of worship itself. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help us understand this and apply it to our lives. Ameen wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.